Question asks us to determine the amplitude of each graph. We are also going to graph to see if we can develop some of these patterns. So if you were going to, in A, if you were going to graph y equals 2/3 sine x, first thing we have to decide is what is that 2/3 going to do? Is it going to be vertical or horizontal? It's going to be vertical. Since it's less than 1, it would be a vertical compression. So you would have to know your parent graph of sine. So how do we graph our parent graph of sine? We draw all of our axes family. So 2 pi, pi, pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. We label our maximum at 1 and minimum at -1. Sine of 0 is 0. So you're going to hear me say about sine that sine starts in the middle going up. And so here's our sine graph. We'll label it. And we want to graph this with a vertical compression. A vertical compression is going to change your y values. So my x values don't change, so I can label my axes family again. Pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. And in fact, all of my x-intercepts where the y value is 0, they're not going to change. But this point that was 1 is going to get multiplied by 2/3, and it's going to become 2/3. And similarly down here, we're going to get -2/3. So our maximum now is at 2/3, and our minimum at -2/3, and here's our new graph. And it has an amplitude of 2/3. And that's going to help us with a shortcut. With all of these, we're right now looking at what happens if you have an A value out in front. And that, as a shortcut, we're going to find out that that A value affects the amplitude. And somehow, don't know how you're going to do this, you're going to have to remember that the A value affects amplitude. Don't know how you're going to remember that. But you have to come up with something strategic that the A value affects amplitude. Okay? All right, so that means if we look at B, we look at graph B, we've got y equals -4 cos of x. So my parent graph would be my cos graph. Again, that has my axes family divided into 4 equal sections for all 4 quadrants. Maximum of 1, minimum of -1. My cos graph starts at 1. So you're going to hear me say a cos graph starts at a maximum. It goes maximum, then center line, then minimum, then center line, then maximum. Here's our cos graph. I'm not going to draw it perfectly to scale, but do you see that this -4 here will be a vertical reflection and a vertical stretch? Again, doesn't affect my y value, my x values. So I can still label my axes family. And all of my x-intercepts, which are here and here, would stay the same. But my value of 1, if my y is getting multiplied by -4, can you see that it's going to be way down here? at -4 now. And my value of -1, when it gets multiplied by -4, it will go up to +4. So now I'll be starting down here, then up here, and back down here. Now we would say the amplitude of this is still +4. Even though there's a -4 out in front, the amplitude is the distance from the center line to the maximum. Let's label it right here. So the A value isn't always exactly your amplitude, but the number is your amplitude. And we're going to find out that with a vertical reflection, so like I said, if I talk about a coast graph, you're going to hear me say a coast graph starts at a maximum. Maximum center line, minimum center line, maximum. A negative coast graph then starts at a minimum and goes minimum center line, maximum center line, minimum. Does it make sense for a sine graph? Sine graph, I'm going to say, starts in the middle going up. Because it is here in the middle, but it's going up. A negative sine graph will start in the middle going down. All right, questions you can circle 3, A and B, 4, 5, and 9. I also want to point out that we skipped example 2A from 6.1 and 6.3. And we're not going to do them, they're not hard. You can try them on your own, you'll find that they are relatively easy. But if you do want to make sure you know how to do them, you can go to YouTube, to show you right here. And if you type in 40SP, that's our class, Chapter 6, Section 1, Example 2A, and do that search, maybe not. Maybe I have to be in the actual YouTube search, not my own website search.
So you can always do the period 3.
Here we go. Push enter. There's one from 7 years ago with 3 views. There's one, oh, look at the 21 views from 6 years ago. Find one that you want. If you want to see that, you could. So those two, to save us a little bit of time, they're not hard. Now that you've done your pie plate, that makes sense. But if you want to look them over, you can.